Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. This is not crypto, it's the NASDAQ. But, I am going to tie crypto into this because it is my belief that crypto, Bitcoin, Total 2, all these big charts that represent crypto, they follow the NASDAQ. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the NASDAQ and try to figure out, is there really a bull run that's going to take place in crypto? So we've seen Bitcoin make an all-time high, but as it's doing that, the rest of crypto is fast asleep. Seems like the rest of crypto doesn't really care. Well, by the end of this video, I think you'll have a good understanding of why I think there is a window of opportunity that is going to open up, and it's just a window for crypto to have a bull run. This is an unusual time in crypto, and I'll make my case why I believe this is an unusual time as we discover and explore this macro structure that I've been deep diving into on the NASDAQ. So I have been working on discovering the repetitive macro structure that the NASDAQ has. I'll show you what I've discovered so far. As time goes on, if I find new things, I'll update this chart, but this is what I have so far. Okay, so this is on a month candle, so I am zoomed out big time. From 1973 to 1987, it is my belief that the NASDAQ completed its first grand cycle, if you will. It then repeated the whole thing all over again from 1987 to 2002, and it is now currently working on the third iteration of this cycle, starting from 2002 to present. Let's go to the beginning and examine what this cycle does so we can have a good understanding, and then we're going to see how it repeats. So we'll start from 1973. Okay, bam, here we are. Pull out my handy dandy arrow. So the chart starts in 1973 and it goes to this box to 1987, and it ends with a spectacular, I said it right, spectacular. I've been having a hard time saying that word for some strange reason. So it ends with a spectacular crash. I believe there is more nuance to this cycle. So it seems real basic. Okay, it moves up to a peak and then crash. Well, yeah, but there's more to it. So let me show you some substructures that I believe are repetitive within this bigger structure. Okay, here we go. 3 more boxes, or 4 more boxes. So this purple box is really only part of this structure. This is actually a bounce. Once this bounce completes, it moves up to the peak, but it does so in a series of 3 waves. So here you have the first wave, the second wave, the third wave. After the third wave, it moves up aggressively to eventually what becomes the peak. Once the peak is in, it's lights out and it crashes. That's the essence of this cycle. So let's see if this thing actually repeats. This next structure, and by the way, I'm still on a month candle, so very zoomed out. So this next structure is from 1987 to 2002. So now we can actually see this full bounce. After this crash, we have essentially like a dead cat bounce. After this bounce, the whole structure begins again. You have this first wave, the second wave, the third wave, and then it moves up aggressively to the peak. Let me tell you something about trying to decipher a repetitive structure within a structure that essentially just keeps moving up. It's very challenging because there are no distinct breaks. It's much easier if you have a structure where you have a bull run, a decline, and then it goes sideways, and then a bull run, like many charts in crypto. Or if you have a bull run and then it kind of consolidates and then it has another bull run and then it consolidates, that's easier. You have these distinct breaks in the chart. With this one, it's just a continual move up to a peak and then just a spectacular crash at the end. So like I pointed out, I believe there are 3 waves, and sometimes it's hard pinpointing where these waves should end, but I believe I have a logical grounding in where they begin and where they end. So once this structure, and by the way, this is the dot-com bust in 2002. It takes 2 years for it to come to its bottom or trough here. And then you have this dead cat bounce, which takes another number of years. And by the time it starts moving up again, it's already 2009. So imagine trying to invest, and maybe some of you guys have, in the NASDAQ during this whole time. It's got to be annoying. Like, there's no new all-time highs, nothing like that. All right, so now we're in the box that we are currently in. So 2002 to present. So we have that dead cat bounce. We have the first wave, the second wave, this sharp pullback. This is the C-19 crash when the economies of the world came to a halt. And then finally, the third wave. This wave is quite a distinct wave. And now we are working on the final part, which is the move up to the peak. After the peak, we know what comes. Yes, the crash. So how does this tie into crypto? I know you guys are all wondering. Okay, so I'm going to compare this chart. Actually, before I do that, I need to continue to make my case a little clearer. What I want to do is I want to take this macro structure stuff off, and I want to show you a fractal that helps you understand where we are in the whole structure compared to the peak. Okay, so some of you may have already seen this structure. If you take this box, which is from December 2018 to March 2020, it's essentially the run-up to the C-19 crash. If we took this, stretched it out to match the timing, height, and depth that comes after this box, this is what we get. There are some differences, but man, it is very similar. So it is my belief that we are currently working on the peak. So if this continues to play out, now we need to understand something about peaks. Peaks are wild places. They're challenging to predict. There is never going to be an exact photocopy of a previous peak in the past. It may come close, but peaks will do their thing, and in the process, they will form a peak. I also believe that there's a good chance that it makes a new all-time high. Now, I don't know the future. It is possible it could turn around here or maybe do a double top, but we have this fractal, which it's followed it fairly close. There's some deviations that suggests this. There's one other fractal that I want to show you. So this is the very first cycle. It's copy and pasted to match today's timing, height, and depth. It doesn't have that partial bounce that starts in 1973. So the structure begins in 1974, goes up to 1987, and has that crash. So as you can see, it has followed the basic idea so far, and we are currently working on what I believe is this final peak. This final peak also goes higher than the previous peak that took place in this fractal. My point in all this is you can see that it is following its history. It's doing the whole kind of macro cycle thing, and we are working on the peak. Okay, so now that I've established that we are working on the peak and that we have a window, this is a window of time before something that happens that has never happened during crypto's entire existence. This part of the NASDAQ has never, ever taken place during crypto's existence. It's important for you to understand that because it's really uncharted waters that we're going into. But before that, we have this, and this is good. So now let's compare it to crypto. This is Bitcoin at the bottom. I'm comparing Bitcoin to the NASDAQ. First thing to notice, look where Bitcoin starts. It starts in 2009. So it literally starts in the glory days of the NASDAQ. It's never seen any real serious crash like takes place on the NASDAQ. Let's see how Bitcoin has reacted to these different boxes that have taken place over Bitcoin's lifetime. So let's zoom into the first bull run structure. Okay, so I'm going to go back to 2011. So this is the first real bull run that takes place. as you can see, it takes place in the beginning stages of that first box, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's clearly not at the peak. It's just in the beginning phases. So it's moving up. The next bull run that takes place is in 2013. And once again, it still doesn't take place at the peak. You would think that these bull runs would take place at the peak, but they don't. They take place as it's moving up, at least in this phase of the cycle. So 2011, 2013 all take place within the first wave, if you will. Let's continue to move on. So the next one is in 2017/18, and we are now in the second wave of the bull run structure, of the macro structure, for the NASDAQ. And it takes place, this time a little further up. It peaks out right before the NASDAQ goes into kind of a sideways moment. Bitcoin almost instinctively knows that it's coming to a kind of a pause in the move up, so it races up and comes to a peak before really any of that stuff happens. And then once it goes into this kind of sideways chop, Bitcoin goes into its decline. So now we start seeing more of a Bitcoin racing to a peak before the NASDAQ kind of stalls out. So the next bull run that takes place is in 2021, and we see a change in habit here. So before it was always moving up, but now we see that it actually comes to its final peak right at the peak of that wave. So now we're in the third wave. So in the beginning of this cycle, it starts in the first wave, just really anywhere. As it progresses, it slowly gets more and more to key points, and now it's to the point where it knows almost that there's going to be a peak, and it starts racing up to its peak in an aggressive way, comes to its peak, and then once the NASDAQ comes to its peak, it falls and Bitcoin falls. So they both fall together. So now they're in real sync. So as Bitcoin has climbed up, so has the NASDAQ. When it came to its peak here, they both came to their peaks at the same place, same time. They both fell in the same time, and now we have the NASDAQ moving up, and we have Bitcoin aggressively moving up. It reminds me of this time over here. We have it aggressively moving up. In fact, Bitcoin is following this fractal. This move up right now that it's doing over here is essentially this fractal. So it's repeating the same structure as we know that the NASDAQ is moving up to its peak. Okay, so here's a look at that structure on Bitcoin. As you can see, today's chart has been following this fractal as it moved up to this peak area. Now, it is possible that the peak structure plays out like this. Any part of this peak structure can move up higher in the same way that this has moved up higher than what this fractal has called for. However, there's also a possibility that it can move up, basically do the same structure, but move up at an angle and potentially even go higher than what we are potentially seeing with this structure. And the reason why I say that is because if we jump over to the NASDAQ, we can see the structure in this box. If we grab that structure and copy and paste it over here, this is what it looks like. So this is considered a recent history fractal, and charts tend to repeat recent history themes. So this is why we see something similar playing out. Well, if this continues to play out, you can see that it's moving up at an angle. So we may see Bitcoin follow in suit by moving up. Once it gets here, it will be the peak structure. Let's compare both that Bitcoin fractal against this fractal. Okay, so on the top, I have the NASDAQ, and on the bottom, I have Bitcoin. This is that fractal. It's a little more zoomed out. But as you can see, the NASDAQ is currently moving up. We can see the line. See this line as it moves? That's in relation to the Bitcoin chart below. So we could see that there's a potential decline that could take place, and that could potentially be this decline that's in the works right now. But we see that it's also moving up, so this potential flat area on this fractal could actually end up being on an angle. So it'd be roughly a similar structure potentially as this, just at an angle, which would make it reach higher than what this fractal suggests. Now, there is this part of the chart on the NASDAQ, which would correspond to something like this. So it could potentially reach a point where it peaks out around this area and then the decline starts. Of course, this is speculation, but it is a possibility that we should be aware of. All right, so now that we looked at these fractals, let's jump back to where we were. Okay, so you see the relationship between Bitcoin and the NASDAQ. Let's see how crypto at large reacts to this. So I'm going to compare Total 2 to the NASDAQ. So here is Total 2, and let's just start from here. So as you can see in 2017/18, it has its bull run, and it's at that same spot right before it kind of stalls out. And then in 2021, it comes to its peak right at the same time the NASDAQ comes to its peak. So you could see how, especially right now, they're very much in sync with each other. Whatever the NASDAQ does is reflected in crypto. When this crash happens, it happens on the NASDAQ as well. When this move up happens, it happens in crypto as well. Right now, it came to its current peak, which is the current peak for the NASDAQ. Now, crypto, or Total 2. So Total 2 is all of crypto minus Bitcoin. It's moving up, but it's not ahead of the game like Bitcoin is, but it is moving up aggressively, but it's more in sync with what's happening here. So if the NASDAQ does what it does, it's going to move up, come to its peak. Hopefully it'll make a new all-time high, which in turn, my guess, is going to cause crypto in general to also move up aggressively and come to its peak. Folks, this is an indicator that we have a bull run coming for crypto, but it's also an indicator that we don't have a large window of time. So that is the key takeaway from this video. We do most likely have a bull run coming for crypto, but it is going to be a short bull run, and the way things are playing out is different from the beginning, the early days of crypto, where Bitcoin would move up at the drop of a hat in any of these boxes. Now it's in sync with the peaks of these boxes and with the peak of the overall macro structure for the NASDAQ. What we're going into is, after this peak, is going to be a substantial crash. How this affects crypto is yet to be seen. This is uncharted waters. We don't know. We've never crossed this bridge with crypto so far. So we are all going to be brave pioneers as we enter this uncharted territory. I don't think the past is going to be a good guide. Maybe it will. But considering that crypto will have never been through a large decline like this, how it reacts is going to be interesting. Well, folks, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but if you did enjoy this video, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. If you're new to this channel and you're not yet a subscriber, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. I'll continue to follow up on these charts as they continue to develop. And if you would like to stay in touch with me, I have a Discord that I'm active on. It's connected to my Patreon. It's a $5 a month subscription. You're welcome to join. I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.